Hi, welcome to NSDEE Project Deploy video. NSDEE supports deploying a nonstop application to a remote nonstop system from your own desktop. In this video, I will demonstrate how to deploy a project and to address the common pitfalls that you might incur in the process. To deploy a project has to be created and a deploy target should be associated with it. Deploy project can be invoked from the deploy toolbar icon. The tooltip on the deploy toolbar shows the configuration and the project that is being deployed. If you wish to deploy a different configuration, you can click the arrow mark beside the icon and select the configuration you wish to deploy. Alternatively, deploy project can also be invoked by right-clicking the project and selecting the deploy project in the context menu, or by selecting the project menu and selecting deploy project under it. To have a look at the information needed to run deploy, let's go to the project creation wizard. For non-SQL based projects, you need to mention the remote system information along with the user, the location where you want the file to be deployed, and the name with which the file has to be deployed. The target system user is the only field that is a must for a deploy. If the destination is empty, then the file will be deployed at the default location configured for the user in the nonstop system. If the target file name is empty or has only spaces in it, then the file will be deployed with its local name and extension in case of OSS, and just the local file name which will be truncated according to the Guardian file name for Guardian. In case of SQLMX, deploy follows a two-step process. First, an SQLMX compile command is run. This transfers the file to the remote nonstop system to the MX location, and then SQL code is compiled. However, the file transferred does not have the right permissions for running the file. Hence, we have a second step where NSDEE uses its deploy.jar to transfer the file to the remote location and name specified by the user and with the right file permissions. In case of SQLMP, the compiler is used to deploy the project in SQLMP. Apart from the remote system and username, you need to provide the remote location with file name, working subvolume, and the catalog information if applicable for your project. Since I already have a project ready, let's cancel the wizard and get back. Hello NSDEE is a simple Hello World program which does not have any SQL code in it. Let's have a look at the deploy command that is generated in its make file. In case you wish to have your own deploy using NSDEE's deploy.jar, this is how the command has to look. Now, let me try to deploy the project. The project has been successfully deployed to the remote nonstop system. You can see that the file has been created on the remote nonstop system, ready to be run. For more information on how to launch a file, refer to the Run Launch video. There are few things you need to consider while deploying. In an OSS project like the one we have here, if you have a SSH connection and if the deploy location is in the format of /G /volume subvolume and the file name is of the form hello.txt, where the length of the file name is less than or equal to 8 characters. In such a case, deploy will create a subvolume with the file name hello under the volume mentioned and deploys the file with the name of its extension, txe in our case. The subvolume name is not used at all. To avoid this issue, please use a different file name or do not deploy to /g in OSS. If you are using an RPU L1508 or later, then you will not be hitting this issue. Let me clean this project to show another issue you might run into. Now delete the debug folder here. The scenario is similar when you have a fresh project which has not been built yet. Now if I deploy the project without invoking build before it, the deploy is successful as seen in the console. However, the debug folder with the executable is not shown in the Nonstop Project Explorer. Even a refresh doesn't help here. However, if we close and open the project again, the folders will show up. You can see the executable inside the debug folder now. NSDEE sets some environment variables for deploy. NSDEE deploy system points to the remote system. NSDEE deploy user points to the username used to connect to the remote system. NSDEE deploy dest points to the remote location where the file has to be deployed. And NSDEE deploy file name points to the name of the file on the remote system after deploy. These environment variables can be used in custom deploy or pre-deploy or post-deploy targets. We will see how to use this later in this video. Now let's have a look at deploying a SQLMX project. CMX Text Sample is a project shared as part of examples in NSDEE. This project has already been built. Let's have a look at its project properties. All the information needed for SQLMX deploy are set here. Let's look at the environment variables. Along with other environment variables set for deploy, similar to non-SQL projects, it also sets one more mxsqlc. This points to the file mxsqlcnt.dll in the preprocessor. Now let's deploy the project. Both SQLMX compile and deploy targets have been run. Now let's have a look at deploying a SQLMP project. TestMP is a project shared as part of examples in NSDEE. This project has already been built. Let's have a look at its project properties. All the information needed for SQLMP deploy are set here. Let's look at the environment variables. The only change in the deploy environment variables set for SQLMP projects is in NSDEE deploy dest and NSDEE deploy file name variables. The remote information for SQLMP deploy takes target file name which contains both the location and file name. NSDEE splits this information and sets the location to NSDEE deploy dest and file name to the NSDEE deploy file name. Now let's deploy the project. The compiler command to deploy the SQLMP object is used and the object is deployed. Let's have a look at deploying a Makefile project. Let's have a look at its project properties now. Generate Makefile automatically is disabled as it's a Makefile project. I have declared all the environment variables needed for building and deploying my project. If you wish to use deploy.jar for your Makefile project, then it is important to know more about deploy.jar and how it is used. Deploy.jar is a program that transfers final executable or libraries from local system to Nonstop. Deploy.jar checks its environment variable NSDE_con_port is set. If it is, then deploy.jar forwards the file transfer request to NSD. NSD connection port is an environment variable that is set to a port number that NSD listens to for file transfer and password requests. This is NSD generated environment variable. If NSD connection port is not set, as is the case when you invoke make outside of NSD, then deploy.jar checks if host pass variable is set. If it is, deploy.jar uses its own copy of FTP or SFTP to transfer a file and uses host pass as the password. Host pass is the environment variable you set if all tools use the same host or user settings or when password needs to be accessible outside of NSD. Now let's have a look at the makefile I have written for this project. I use NSDEE's deploy.jar for deploying here. The options that are passed to this deploy command are the system information, including the username, location for deploying, the file name with which it has to be deployed, the file code, mode of transfer, and connection information such as is it a SFTP or a FTP with their port numbers. We also pass location of the file that will be deployed. Though the file code is set for OSS projects also, it is just ignored. If you are writing your own deploy command, you need to take care of all the escaping sequences, especially for guardian paths. For example, the dollar has to be escaped with a slash dollar to make it slash dollar dollar. Most of these paths have been addressed for managed projects. For more details on this, refer to escaping special characters in NSDE's user guide. Now let's just deploy the project. The project has been deployed successfully. Now let's see how we could configure a custom deploy. You can create custom deploy targets for both local managed and makefile projects. Here I am using a Hello World managed make project. The advantage of creating custom deploy targets is that if you use, for example, SFTP, an open SSH program for file transfers available with Cygwin, you can create much more flexible and complex deploy targets. First, let's set the deploy target to custom_deploy. I will need to go to setting for remote under CC++ build. Rename deploy target deploy to custom_deploy. Here you can also set the pre and post deploy targets. Now let's just get back. I have created the makefile.targets file here. This file is included by default in the makefile. I have written down the command that is needed to deploy the project using Cygwin's open SSH program. This command transfers an executable to OSS, sets permission on the file, and runs SFTP's ls command to show the permissions set. Using SFTP in a deploy target requires setting up passphrase authentication so that SFTP can connect in batch mode without requesting a password from you. I have already set up passphrase authentication here. If you set passphrase from Cygwin, then make sure you launch Eclipse also from Cygwin prompt. To know how to set up passphrase setup and launch NSD from Cygwin, please refer to the user guide. You can see that the custom deploy target requires target all to be executed before it starts tasks. This dependency is needed as you need to build before deploying the project. I have already built this project. Now let's deploy it. You can see that the custom_deploy target has been executed and the project has been deployed. One final thing we should take care with deploy is the firewall settings. If your firewall is enabled, then some of your deploys might fail. Let's look at one such scenario. I have a SQLMP project here. This has to be deployed. Let me invoke deploy over it. It has thrown an error saying unable to send remote procedure call to SQLMP server. RPC call times out. Sometimes you could also see messages saying failed to establish secure connection to nonstop host or transfer failed, request exception, file transfer failed, cannot open data connection. All these error messages are examples of Windows Firewall issue. To resolve this, open Windows Firewall, select Allow a program or feature through the Windows Firewall. Select c89.exe, ccom or cconf, eclipse.exe and portmap.exe. If they are not on the list, add them by selecting them using the Allow Another Program button. Let's try deploying the project again. It has been successfully deployed. If you also have a corporate firewall enabled, make sure the connection ports are enabled there too. You could also disable firewall completely, though it is not recommended. Sometimes you could also hit FTP transfer issues when firewall is enabled and you have a Windows 7 and are using Java 7 for Eclipse. Then you need to run the command to disable stateful FTP. The command is netsh advert firewall set global stateful FTP disable. With this, we come to the end of this video on Project Deploy. Watch out for more videos on NSDEE. Thank you.